I did see a story today where someone found they thought it was trash bags on the road, but a family found
so mad.
two big trash bags. There was $1 million. They turned it in. They were getting with the post office to see who it belongs to, and I saw that. I was like,
wait, they turned it in?
They turned it.
Like, hey, we found something on the road. Let me know if someone calls you.
No, they turned it in.
Like
and
in trash bags or in like mail bags?
No. They were like they weren't even. They were like, it was like a heavy duty bag, like a
kind of like those money sacks.
kind of.
Mhm.
Right,
That maybe
yeah.
like an armored car would have, like those
Yes.
kind of like
That you would've
canvassy, like
she ran it over too.
Yeah, she ran it said ran over and they're like, we're not gonna leave it. We'll pick it up. They saw another one on the side of the road.
So if it's a shady duffel bag on a shady street, maybe looking over my back. If it's on a road, like it fell out of our bro, they've got
That's your
insurance. They've got insurance.
That's your fault.
Not even. Hey! Don't drop your money at church.
Are we
We'll
live
take it.
yet?
We're getting close. We're live on Boxcast and YouTube and Twitter. Hey guys, welcome to the 30-second pre-show. We're just waiting.
Where
We're
Jarrell
live on
says a bunch of
all platforms.
silly stuff.
I haven't said the silliest thing.
Well, yet.
That honor will go to Dave.
Special guest for silliness.
We were just saying how I haven't said the silliest thing on ACC Talk. That award goes to you.
Wait, what did you say?
Oh, I made a joke about COVID.
Oh yeah.
We're kind of live.
We're kind of live.
I wouldn't
Wouldn't.
incriminate yourself.
Let's not revisit.
Say it again. That's
You're technically doing it right now. Discipleship pastor in the corner.
Email dterrell@tuscaloosa.org.
Dave, so really? Crazy story. Yeah, seriously, I can't. What's going on? Facebook, give me the program.
Maybe it's a sign.
You're a sign.
Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Just throwing it out there. Being a techie guy, you're kind of falling off the techie thing today.
I don't run Facebooks.
Do you run the recording when we preach?
Run it. I don't run Behringer. I didn't make it. I also don't make SanDisk.
But do you manage what's on the disc?
Do I manage it?
Like what's on the disc? Like
I am the
thumb drive?
manager of SanDisk.
Man, who's
We just need to get a podcast of you two
Dave?
guys.
Can you message Jasmine with any announcements?
Do you run the recording when we preach? Run it. I don't run Behringer. Oh my word. Where we at? This is even longer than it normally should be. Why does it say it's not going there? Dude, that's the deal. That's the stream key. What does it take? Oh. Welcome to ACC Talk. My name is Jarrell.
I'm Rob,
Hey, I'm Zoe.
and we're finally here.
We are finally here. It is better late than never. Would you agree?
Says we were.
He's
don't know.
he's very silent. He's very silent. Anyways, we're so glad that you joined us this afternoon. We have some wonderful things in store. Tell us what they are, Rob.
You're in charge. I have no recollection of what we said.
I'm in charge.
Of this
I
spot.
get
Of
to
this
be in
spot.
charge.
You usually lead this. I can't remember what you say. You ramble off a lot of stuff in the pre-show, and I can't remember what you throw out there. And
I will be.
you
the in
usually
charge.
kind of steer this
I will
conversation.
be
So I'm going
in
to let
charge.
you continue.
Okay, so this is what I want to know.
You might be losing your in charge.
What do you think in 50 years? What do you think the future is going to be like in 50 years? You can pick any aspect. You can talk about transportation. You can talk about houses. You can talk about jobs. You can talk about energy. But you can pick any aspect. But in 50 years, what do you think the world is going to be like? And we would love to know from you guys in the comment. What do you think the world is going to be like?
Yes. 50 years? I ain't here.
How old are you?
45.
95.
Unless I'm like my grandma. My grandma made it to 100, but
Nice.
I don't think that's happening for me.
Okay. What else do you think the future's going to be like? Minus Rob.
A great place. I'm out of here. I don't know. I mean, it's crazy when you think about just how far things have come. Like even talking about my grandma. When she was alive, just even the thought of a cell phone, an email was so foreign to her to try to wrap her head around. You just kind of go, what is it going to be like? I don't know. I really don't. I mean, you see some crazy stuff already happening, like cars that can drive themselves. Will that be really the way it is? What kind of technology will that be? Who knows?
What do you guys think? Flying cars? 50 years. I know they promised it like 200 years ago.
Yeah.
But like, do you think cars are flying? All right, Zoe.
I don't know. I think I'm wondering. I won't say a plateau. I think that there might be some like a few things that are like, wow, that was one significant thing. But I feel like we're living in like a big technological shift. Because you even look, let's say 10 years ago, how much has changed in 10 years. And so I think we're in the midst of it. But I wonder if we're going to get to a point to where it's like, all right, we've kind of like, there's a little bit of new invention here and there. I don't know if it'll be like way crazy different than what it is now. Because I think you watch like from the 1980s, like the expectation of it's going to be 30 years later. And like 30, 40 years later, can you imagine what it's going to be like? It's not even a little bit like that. So if granted now we have more, I wouldn't say we have more technology, we have more resourcing, I think, to do some of those things. But I think it'll look a little bit better in terms of what we have available to us. But I don't know that it's going to be maybe as crazy as I would see in any kind of movie with how far we think it's going to go.
Yeah, I'm more of the crazy person thinking what's going to change. So my big things that I think will change in 50 years, and this is more on the further end of the 50 years, not like in the next 10 years. I think that we will have designer babies, meaning I think that you'll be able to like choose their eye color, their hair color, that sort of stuff. Like if they're going to be like stronger, or I don't think anybody's going to pick like, I want it to be frail. But I think that, I mean, scientists are already like messing with genes and stuff like that. So I think that that would become a thing. Not saying it should be a good thing, but I think it'll be a thing. I think another thing is, I think also on the further end of the 50-year scale, I think that we will be able to have to like grow organic organs or have like mechanical ones. Like I think that we will have like an artificial heart. Like not every single person, but if you need like a heart replacement, I think there won't be any more needs for like donor lists and stuff like that. I think that they'll get one out of the freezer and they'll throw it in your chest and you're good to go.
3D print it.
And I think that it'll be way more expensive, but I think that'll happen. I don't see flying cars, but I do see it being a requirement for autonomous vehicles. And then maybe like some special license if you're going to drive your own car. I think the moment that they can guarantee no crashes, no DUIs, you know, those sorts of different things, I think the world will just be like, okay, we'll do it. And then you have like, a permit to like drive on like racetracks or something, like if you want to keep driving. And then my last thing, I think that they're going to come up with batteries that last a lot longer than they currently do right now. Those are my guesses. And I'm talking like your cell phone doesn't need to be charged for like 6-8 months.
So apparently he hasn't been sleeping much because he's had a lot of time to think about these things.
No.
and,
This
like,
is straight off the head. But I'm thinking 50 years. Like I'm thinking like absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
See, I think it'd be cool. I don't. Maybe I'm the skeptic. I don't know if it'll be there, but I see all like the futuristic movies. I'm like, that would be really cool. Look at that.
Yeah.
But
I just I'm not smart enough to say this, but I feel like what would be so hard about creating an organ? You know? Like what would be hard about that? Now obviously some doctor or some what do they call them, biologists? No, anatomist would say to me like, really? What's so hard about making a heart? Everything. But it just makes me feel like, it's like, sure. They're just going to start making stuff, dropping it in.
little duct tape and
A little duct.
Seriously.
Yeah, seriously. They send one to your own house and they tell you incision here, crack here. So yeah. All right, cool. Well, we want to hear your any guesses that you guys have for the next 50 years. Maybe that might be 100 or 200 years from now, but your guesses. And if you're someone on here that's watching that you've seen crazy development, in the last 20 or 30 years, say maybe something that surprised you in terms of that. So anyways, we got a few updates for you in terms of the survey and some plans moving forward for the church. And so Rob's going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we did that survey, had a great response. I appreciate everybody that sent that back to us. And we been looking at those results, and it's kind of like you would expect, and that's kind of the beauty of what the church is. It's made up of different people that don't all look alike, don't all think the same, and so there was pretty varying results on that. But kind of a breakdown of where people said they were comfortable in coming back. It was pretty much split to 25% roughly, not exactly, but 25% folks responded, we'd love to come back now. 25 said when Texas reopens. 25% was roughly when Texas, 2 to 3 weeks after Texas fully reopens. And then there was a couple last options that was wait to school and a vaccine, two answers that were equal to about 25%. And so we just kind of looking at that, and then even at the capacity of what you would feel comfortable in the room being at in that varied. The number one was about 50%. And so it's just trying to figure out what that looks like as we move forward. Again, we want to be cautious in the sense we don't want to be all of a sudden in the news for something that's not good. We don't want to be in the news because there was a bunch of people that got exposed to it or a number of people come down with it. We want to watch to see as Texas reopens, and I'm excited to see the steps that are taking place. But if there's all of a sudden a rise in cases, we want to be cautious of that. And so we're not rushing this. We kind of taking it day by day, but we're kind of looking right now. I'd say we are leaning. We're not saying there's a certain date to this, but we'd be kind of looking at that 2 to 3 weeks after Texas is at a fully reopened status that we would want to entertain that and start looking at that. And again, it differs on do we do kids ministry, do we not, and all what people would expect. And so the staff is working through looking at different ways and what that looks like, updating even policies such as a wellness policy for children's ministry. Getting some of those sanitary, hand sanitizer dispensers to be able to put around the building, and just working through it. So we're there. We're going to be sending out an email either this end of this week or beginning of next week, kind of just addressing some of what I just talked about as we kind of just go forward. And so hang in there. We want to be back, but at the same time, I've seen some of those. I don't know if you guys have too, and maybe you at home have also, but you see some of these pictures where the room is really barely, it feels like nobody's in the room, even though there's some people in the room. That's really kind of hard. That's really disheartening. There's energy is drained out of that environment, and we really want to come back and be able to worship and really, because God's continued to do some really cool things through this time, and so we really want to be able to kind of hopefully be a little bit closer than, hey, way over there, yeah, and kind of have that. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, definitely. So we will be keeping you guys up to date through emails, and so definitely just be on the lookout for those just in terms of what we do moving forward. But yeah, like Rob said, we're really excited about coming back as soon as it's safe for everyone in the congregation.
Yep.
Cool. Well, hey, we are going to wrap up our series on spirituality versus religion, and really just speak on this last week is why does religion catch such a bad rap? And what are some things about religion that turn people away from Jesus? And so we're going to answer that question, and we're going to wrap up the series, and then, And so I'm going to toss that to you guys. When you hear the word religion, what are some of the things that kind of pop to mind?
Behavior modification.
For sure. I used to do this, but now it's not okay to do that anymore, so I'm going to stop doing that.
I think you hear that word, or I hear that word, it's kind of almost has a negative tone to it. I think it just has almost like that's what maybe you call it if you've had a bad church experience. That's religion, and so it's like left a bad taste in your mouth. And I think it comes down to like this seems maybe more rules driven, and it's just kind of almost cold and stagnant when I think about it.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah, when I hear the word religion, I kind of hear exclusivity. Like I think that obviously there are certain things that you have to abide by to be a Christian or to be a Muslim or to be Jewish or, a Buddhist or things like that. And so therefore my religion is exclusive, and unless you do the things in my religion, you can't be me. And so that's sort of the things that I hear about. And so kind of wrapping up some of the things that you guys have said is like, I can see why when the world looks at Christians, but just in any religion in general, how they may be kind of turned off to that. And so with that being said, let's kind of like maybe talk about some times in the Bible where things got more religious or more rules based than it was maybe more about a relationship and believing in Jesus. And so I just want to kick that to you guys because I don't think it's just a problem that we have had today. I think it's been happening really kind of all throughout, starting with Jesus into right now.
Well, I'd say it even goes further back than that in the Old Testament when God establishes his people in the Promised Land, and he then allows Solomon to build the temple where he's going to be, and that's where worship, that's where sacrifices were going to take place. When Israel obviously splits into two nations, becomes Israel and Judah. Israel goes into captivity first, and then Judah later. Nebuchadnezzar comes in and ultimately destroys the temple there in Jerusalem. When the Israelites was basically dispersed in that time, all of a sudden worship, the relationship with God changed drastically because where they weren't able to go to the temple to worship. I think that is really where we start to see this emergence of how do I be a good Jewish person? What are those rules? And that's where you get all of the added on like man-made traditions really started to become very important during that time to the Jewish people. And they added, they've got the books that talk about all of these things that, again, they're man-made traditions, and I think it started with a really good intent, but it became so legalistic. You fast forward to when Jesus shows up and these Pharisees that are there, and that's what Jesus got so upset about so often. As you see, when he's mad and annoyed at somebody, it was those guys because they were making it difficult for people to truly have that relationship. And it's kind of a Christian cliche, right? It's not a religion, it's a relationship. But it's not so much about all of Jesus doesn't want you to be sitting there thinking the do's and don'ts. He wants you just to love, and it's almost like a reflect response to him. But he showed up, and there was all of these things like you can't do this on the Sabbath, otherwise you don't love God. Well, really? Is that true? And so that's where I think you start to see it. Came into the New Testament. I know we're going to talk about the early church and some of the issues that continued there. And so it's been a problem for a long time.
For sure.
Yeah. And I don't know that there's like a here's where, but it's just really interesting to think about when Jesus showed up, and then when he left, they had the Holy Spirit came upon him, and just the rapid growth you saw of the early church, and how. And this might seem a little bit like, oh, hey, but like realistically, we have the privilege and we're fortunate today to where we get to see the scripture in its entirety. We see the Old Testament, we see the New Testament, we can see all of that. But the early church that we talk about, they didn't have like the New Testament that we see, yet somehow they were growing like crazy. And so obviously there was something really unique that was happening, and we see what we have the fortunate privilege to see what was happening. But it's just interesting how, like you said, all this stuff started to happen, and how easily when you get into, well, this is how it's been, this is what we've done, and so this is what we're going to do. And how, like, there's many examples. The one that keeps coming to mind is when the Pharisees wanted to trip up Jesus about, hey, do you observe the Sabbath? Like, and they had this guy that he healed, and they got all upset about it, and how they just they're missing it. You get wrapped up in, well, it's supposed to be this way that you miss. No, my whole thing was, how are you loving people? Like, the way that you love me is by loving people. And so it's just really interesting to think about that. And but again, it's hard. You look at even traditionally how we might look at something, or how, well, we've done it this way. Even like, I even think in what we're going through right now, I know that for me, even there's the way that we have done ministry, or the way that we've done church isn't, like, we've had to shift how we've done it. Like, the church doesn't stop, we just have to shift how we do it. And I wonder how much that even, like, well, we're used to gathering in together on a Sunday, we do this, then we do this, then we do this, and how that format even changes up. But how much are we resistant to even something like that, as simple as our gathering together? But it's when you add in the human element of what we've done, we're always doing that. It's easy to see why people can feel like, well, there's this exclusivity, and even in the church, they seem like they disagree about everything. So
For sure. Yeah, I think one of the place that jumps out to me quite a bit is in 2 Galatians, where 2 Galatians? Oh, no, Galatians 2. Sorry. Oh, my gosh. Brain fart. Thank you. See, the funny thing about Rob is he won't correct you. He'll just give you like a sarcastic deal, like, what are you talking about, you heretic? Anyways, but he won't say it, but I'll say it for him. Anyways, Galatians chapter 2, or 2 Galatians, or hesitations. Peter is confronted by Paul, and the crazy thing about this particular story is Peter is hanging out with his Gentile friends, and he's eating with them, and he's hanging out with them, and they're having a great time. But then something crazy happens. Some Jewish people show up, and so then Peter stops eating with the Gentiles, and he starts eating with his Jewish friends, and then all of a sudden he starts talking about this need for circumcision, and Paul catches wind of this, and he knows how important it is for the gospel to continue to be effective among the Gentiles, that he feels like he needs to go and talk with Peter. And so he confronts him in love, and he kind of lays it out for him. And Peter repents, and that's really good. But you can see how it's so easy, really, even way back in the early days of the church, where we can get caught up in rules and regulations, and we kind of miss the heart of what God is saying. But I think the one thing in that is, what we're not saying is to throw out Scripture. We're not saying that God hasn't told us this is what right living looks like, and this is a road that leads to peace, and this is a road that leads to love. By doing these things, you'll be able to walk on that path. And so we're not throwing out everything. What we are saying is, we don't want to get into a place where we have crafted this religion that keeps people out. The gospel is supposed to invite people in.
I think you touched on something. You said the word, like, human side of things. And I think if you go back, think about when God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. What's the first commandment? Little pop quiz for 2 Galatians over here.
Love the Lord your God.
Very good. What was the
love everything.
What was the second?
Love your neighbor? No,
Idols.
I'm wrong.
You don't have any idols.
I'm wrong. Oh yeah, no, yeah, idols.
So God's first, and then he's talking about, because he knew, I think it was very intentional, like, I need to be the number one priority, and then don't get distracted by these idols. And I think part of when religion comes into play is because we start making other things idols. It's about, man, look what I can do. Look how many good deeds I can do. Look how much money I can give. Look how I can keep all of these rules. Really, that becomes an idol of self. And so God from the get-go was like, don't do that. And like you talked about, the early church, they had disagreements because you had different cultures come in to say, no, we believe in Jesus. So you've got a Jewish culture with all of those Old Testament pieces, a lot of that tradition, now clashing with Gentiles that like, we don't do that stuff. That seems crazy. And I mean, even in Acts chapter 15, James, there's kind of all the church leaders have gotten together and they're like, this is crazy. And we're seeing this debate about who needs to do what. And it says in Acts chapter 15, verse 19, it is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to God. Instead, we should write to them, telling them, and he just kind of says a few things: abstain from food polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, from meat of strangled animals, and from blood. And really, just saying, look, why do we make it difficult? And I think when we get to those man-made things, that's where religion, it becomes more religious, and it's like, I'm going to make hoops for you to jump through. And they addressed that early on and said, let's not make it difficult. Let's make it so people can encounter the grace of Christ, but also wrestle with that tension of the truth, the holiness of who God is, and how you live in that balance of those together.
For sure. So what do we say to the person that has either been turned off by a bad church experience or has run into a lot more rules than they've run into the person of Jesus? What's the advice, or what's the thing that you just want to say to them today?
I think we addressed this even in the earlier week, and I said it. I would just want to apologize, and I'm not saying it was us. If it was us as a church that did something like that, man, I'd love to know what we said or how you felt that way. But I think there are a lot of people that have had bad experiences, and just be able to say, hey, as a pastor, as a believer and follower of Jesus Christ, as somebody in ministry, I just want to say sorry. That is not what God wanted it to be. But again, every church is run, here on earth by humans. And I've heard the old saying out there, again, it's kind of been around a long time, but if you ever find the perfect church, you better leave because you're going to mess it up, right? Because that's the reality. There's no such thing as a perfect human. We all sin. We all have our own issues. And so the church is going to be, in some sense, broken in that way because it's led by man, led by humans in that aspect. And so, again, I'd love to say sorry. I'm not going to tell you just to forget the hurt you feel or those pains and those memories. But, I'd love for you to give it another shot, to really just start to seek what God would lead you to do. Ask Him to lead you to a church that could really show you what it's supposed to be in the best way possible.
Yeah. And I would say on that as well, I think in the whole, like, we've messed it up in tradition, I think one thing that we as the church, and I'm sure I've played some role in this, is we've almost made it feel weird to genuinely and ask really hard, tough questions. Not necessarily just to the people that are in leadership, but like being able to ask God really difficult questions. I think that's really where we see our faith in Him grow, is when we're willing to say, this is almost scary to ask, or this is something that I've not seen answered before, and being able to come to God with that, and being open and willing to do that. And so as someone who is a pastor, that like we all have walked through stuff, but on a personal level, we'll share, if you meet me in person, I'll share more of my story. But even like leading in ministry, there's been times where I've really questioned, like, what are you doing? Why is this happening? And God was okay to hear that, and he answered that. And I'm not giving you if you do this, this is going to happen. But I know that God can take on that. And I think in the religion, in the rules sect, it feels like maybe, if I say this, then the church is going to judge me this way. Or if I'm struggling or wrestling with this, and if I call that out, or if I say that, they're going to respond differently. And again, I agree, like, in whatever way that, whether it's myself or another church, has like negatively impacted, man, that's not what Jesus wanted. Like the whole thing is wrapped up when Jesus said the biggest two things is to love me and to love people. That's it. Like those are, if you take all the commandments, it's those two things. And I think we as people sometimes have a hard time doing that, because it's simple, but it's very demanding to love someone. Like when thinking about what does love require of me, it's all sacrificial. I think of the relationship with my wife, like, what does it take for me to love her? I choose not to do certain things, not because there's these rules that say, well, you don't do that. It's because I love that person that I'm not going to. And so I would say, again, apologizing for that, but also it's okay to question. It's okay to doubt. But the truth of who Jesus is doesn't change. That, for me at least, was hopeful and encouraging, is that God doesn't change. The hope of Jesus doesn't change. And so you can still question, you can still ask those things, and God's okay to hear that.
Very cool. Yeah, I would say if you are a person that has struggled with religion and all the rules, I would say give Jesus a shot first. I do believe that if you have a real experience and encounter with Jesus, that the transformation, the new life that he promises, he is going to take care of the rest. And so there is this piece of saying, Jesus, you are Lord, and I surrender my life to you. And we start this journey. Every single person, everybody at this table, every single person you ever known that has started their relationship with Jesus, they started at the beginning of the road and walked a mile, 10 miles, 100 miles with Jesus, and that changed their life. And so trying to follow 1,000 rules from day one, or trying to get your life right in this moment, never happens. It'll never happen. But this road that we take with Jesus, he does the transforming. And so that's what I just want to encourage you with.
I think it's important to remember too, and you said it already, Jarrell, like we're not throwing scripture out here, but I think we want to keep in balance the reminder of what Jesus wants us to do. Again, we are not saying in any way it's just all about grace, go do whatever you want, because that's really not a life that's following Jesus. I think one of the greatest examples of Jesus holding that of grace and that truth and tension is found in John 8, where the woman's caught in the act of adultery. And they bring her before him. They're trying to trap Jesus, but he's just way smarter, and he's not going to let it happen. But basically, he gets rid of everybody else, and it's just him and this woman that has been humiliated. And he says, where are those that condemned you? And she's like, they're gone. And he goes, well, neither do I. And so you see that element of grace come into play here, that Jesus is about grace. He is about forgiveness. But then he says, but go and leave your life of sin. He challenges with the truth that sin is not something like we just enjoy and are doing and going, oh, I've got Jesus, I can do it. There is that piece that if we truly have faith in Jesus, we are going to try to live a life that honors him, and you're going to repent and turn from some of those behaviors and practices we maybe have. And so I just want to make sure we're very clear on that it's not, what we're saying is not that we're just a church that says, do whatever you want, God will forgive you. I do believe in God's forgiveness, but at the same time, I think there's a very clear challenge to be holy because God is holy.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for joining us today. This weekend, you can join us online at 9:30, 11, and 12:30. Join us 15 minutes before for children's worship.
Yeah.
And
you guys have been doing a great job with that. It's been awesome to watch.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So, with that being said, you guys have a great day.